My parents covered up that my sister slept with my husband. I was devastated. So at her baby shower, I gave her a gift they'll never, ever forget. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. You see, I always knew I wasn't the favorite. Nobody ever comes right out and says it, of course. It's not something you can point to on a chart. It's just a feeling you grow up with, a feeling that settles deep in your bones, like a permanent chill. It's in the way your parents look at you compared to your sibling. It's in the tone of their voice, the choices they make in moments both big and small, the constant, subtle reinforcement that you are somehow secondary. In my family, my older sister, Meredith, was the sun. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who soaked up all the love and attention while I was her shadow. I orbited her, existing in the space she left behind. Growing up, the difference was a landscape I learned to navigate. If Meredith got an A on a test, the paper would be framed and hung on the living room wall, a monument to her brilliance. If I got an A, I'd get a brief, pleasant smile before the conversation somehow drifted back to one of Meredith's achievements. I remember one year, for my 10th birthday, I was so excited for the cake and presents. My parents brought out a beautiful bicycle, my favorite color and everything. My heart soared. Then they said, "We got this for you and Meredith to share, but since her birthday isn't for a few months, you can ride it first." It wasn't my bike. It was our bike, given on my birthday. That's how it always was. This dynamic didn't stop when we grew up. When I graduated from college and landed my first design job, I called my mom, my voice buzzing with excitement. "That's nice, honey," she'd said, her voice distracted. "Did I tell you Meredith is up for a promotion? Her boss just loves her. We're thinking of having a little dinner to celebrate if she gets it." She didn't get the promotion, but they had the dinner anyway. I didn't get a dinner. I got a "that's nice." But despite everything, I never hated her. Not really. I think it's hard to hate the sun, even when you're living in its shade. Sure, I resented the pedestal my parents put her on, but she was my sister. I loved her. Back then, I told myself it wasn't her fault our parents treated us differently. I thought that as we grew up, as we became adults with our own lives, things would balance out. We'd find our own places in the world, and our relationship would finally feel equal. I thought that when I finally found someone who loved me for me, it would be my own separate world, untouched by the dynamics of my childhood. The man who I thought was my world, the one person who saw me and not just Meredith's little sister, was Sterling. My husband. For 5 years, he was my everything. He saw the inequity, he sympathized with me, he held me when I felt small. He was my safe harbor. And that's what makes the rest of this story so much harder to tell. 2 years ago, everything I thought I knew fell apart. It was a crisp evening in early fall, the kind where the air smells like leaves and new beginnings. We were driving over to my parents' house for dinner. Sterling was at the wheel, humming along to some old 70s rock song on the radio, one hand resting gently on my knee. The gesture was so familiar, so comforting, but it did little to ease the tightness in my chest. "You okay, hon?" he asked, glancing over at me. His brow was furrowed with what I thought was genuine concern. "You've been quiet since we left the house." "Just thinking," I said, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "You know how I get before these family dinners. It's like I have to put on armor." He squeezed my knee. "I know. But tonight's a good night. We're celebrating. It's for Meredith. Just smile, be happy for her, and we'll be out of there in a few hours. Then it's just you and me." He made it sound so simple. He was right, of course. We were celebrating. My parents had invited us over to announce Meredith's pregnancy. She and her husband, Harrison, had been trying for a while, and I knew how much she wanted this. I was genuinely happy for her. I really was. I'd spent the previous weekend picking out the perfect gift, a soft, hand-knitted baby blanket and a little stuffed elephant. But still, I couldn't shake that familiar knot in my stomach. It was a constant, dull reminder that I wasn't quite enough, that I would always be second best, even in my own happiness for her. The dinner was exactly as I'd expected. The house smelled of pot roast and vanilla candles. The conversation revolved entirely around Meredith. My parents were, as I knew they would be, beaming with a pride so intense it was almost blinding. They gushed about Meredith's glow, about what a wonderful, natural mother she would be. My father was already talking about college funds and legacies. Harrison looked proud, if a little overwhelmed by the sheer force of my parents' enthusiasm. Meredith, in the center of it all, was soaking it in, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. I smiled, I laughed at the right moments, I congratulated her again on the gift. I played my part beautifully. Sterling was a rock, just as he always was. He kept his arm around me, he engaged my father in a conversation about football, he made me feel like we were a team. He was my anchor in a sea of my own insecurity. Or so I thought. It was later, after the cake had been cut and the coffee had been served, that my entire world tilted on its axis and shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces. I excused myself to use the bathroom upstairs, needing a moment to just breathe, to escape the suffocating bubble of Meredith worship. When I came back down, the house was quieter. Sterling and Harrison were in the living room, their faces lit by the blue glow of the TV, watching the game. I passed by the kitchen on my way to join them, and I heard my parents whispering. I should have kept walking. God, to this day, I wish I had just kept walking. But something in their hushed, urgent tones made me freeze. I flattened myself against the cool, textured wallpaper in the dim hallway, just out of sight. The only sounds were the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and the frantic pounding of my own heart. He promised it wouldn't happen again, my father was saying, his voice low and gravelly, thick with disappointment. He gave me his word. And then I heard my mother's voice, sharp and clear, slicing through the quiet. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we can't ever let Aubrey find out. You know how she is. She's sensitive. It would destroy her. My blood went cold. My breath caught in my throat. What wouldn't happen again? What would destroy me? My dad sighed, a heavy, weary sound. I know. It was a simple mistake. A lapse in judgment. People make them. The important thing is that Meredith managed to get pregnant. This baby is a blessing. It will fix everything, you'll see. A mistake? Meredith's mistake? At first, the words didn't connect. My mind was scrambling, trying to make sense of it. A mistake that involved a he. A mistake my father was disappointed in. A mistake that I could never know about. And then, the pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, soul-crushing certainty. They weren't just talking about any mistake. They were talking about how Meredith had slept with Sterling. My Sterling. My husband. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The wallpaper in the hallway seemed to press in on me. The ticking clock grew louder, each tick a hammer blow against my skull. They knew. My parents knew. And they had decided, together, not to tell me. They chose to protect their precious girl, their golden child, because she didn't deserve to have her image tarnished. They chose her. Again. Over me. It felt like every single moment of feeling less than in my entire life was just validated in that one horrific instant. They weren't protecting me. They were managing me. I don't remember how I left the house that night. It's a blur of disjointed images and sounds. I have a vague memory of walking into the living room, the cheerful sounds of the TV suddenly sounding grotesque. I remember muttering something about a sudden, splitting headache, about not feeling well. I couldn't look at them. Not my parents, who were now smiling at me from the kitchen doorway as if they hadn't just sentenced me to a life of ignorance. Not Meredith, who was laughing at something on the TV. And especially not Sterling, who looked up at me with concern and asked if I needed anything. I just shook my head and fled. I got in my car and drove. I don't remember where I went. The streetlights of my familiar town blurred into long streaks of yellow and white, like paint strokes on a dark canvas. I think I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store, miles from my home, in a part of town I rarely visited. I just sat there, in the driver's seat, staring at the bright, empty entrance. The engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound in my silent, shattered world. A memory surfaced, sharp and cruel. Sterling and I, driving down this exact road a year ago, coming home from a movie, laughing about something stupid. He'd reached over and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. "I'm the luckiest man in the world," he'd said, his voice soft. Was he sleeping with her then? The thought made me physically ill, a hot, sour wave rising in my throat. I got out of the car, needing air. I walked aimlessly under the humming fluorescent lights of the parking lot, watching a young woman push a cart with a sleeping toddler inside. A perfect little family. A life I thought I was building. It all felt like a mirage. I must have stayed there for hours. My phone buzzed in my purse, making me jump. A text from Sterling. "Hey, you okay?" "Left in a hurry. Call me." I let the phone go dark. I couldn't speak to him. What would I even say? How do you ask your husband if he's sleeping with your sister? The drive home was silent and cold. The house felt alien when I walked in. Every picture on the wall, every piece of furniture we'd picked out together, felt like a prop in a play. A cruel joke. I walked past our bedroom and looked at his side of the bed, the indentation still on his pillow. I felt a wave of nausea. I went straight to the guest room, locked the door, and fell onto the bed, fully clothed. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I just lay there, staring into the darkness, feeling nothing and everything all at once. My life as I knew it was over. I just didn't know what to do next. For the next 2 weeks, I was a ghost in my own home. My life shrank to the 4 walls of the guest room and my small home office. I moved from the bed to the desk to the living room couch, a small, self-contained orbit of misery. Sterling kept trying to breach the walls I'd built. "Aubrey, what's wrong?" he'd ask, his voice full of that fake, gentle concern that now made my skin crawl. He'd stand in the doorway of the guest room, a confused look on his face. "You've barely said 2 words to me. Did something happen at your parents' house? Did your mom say something?" "I'm just tired," I'd say, my voice flat, my eyes fixed on my laptop screen. "Just a lot of work stress." I couldn't look him in the eye. Every time I did, all I could see was him with her. My sister. In my mind, I saw a slideshow of horrors, moments I couldn't unsee even though I'd never witnessed them. Work was a disaster. I'm a graphic designer, and my job requires creativity, something that had completely evaporated from my soul. I'd sit at my computer for hours, staring at a blank screen for a client project, the cursor blinking, mocking me. Emails piled up. "Hi Aubrey, just checking in on the proofs." "Aubrey, we have a deadline on Friday." I couldn't bring myself to care. One night, just to feel something normal, I tried to cook. I put a frozen pizza in the oven and then sat on the couch, forgetting about it completely until the smoke alarm shrieked through the silent house. I just stood there in the haze, watching it burn, feeling a strange kinship with the charred pepperoni. My best friend, Claire, called. "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while." "Everything okay?" Her cheerful voice came through the voicemail. I couldn't answer. I typed out a text, "Hey." So sorry, just swamped with work. Let's catch up soon. I stared at the words, a lie, and then deleted it. How could I explain that my entire world had been built on a foundation of lies? The pain and confusion were a constant fog. But slowly, over those 14 days, something else began to happen. The fog began to thin. The numbness started to fade, and it was replaced by something cold, sharp, and much more dangerous. It was a cold, clear anger. I realized I didn't want closure. I didn't want apologies. They wouldn't mean anything coming from liars. No, I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to understand the depth of their betrayal. I decided I wasn't going to confront them, not in the way they'd expect. No yelling, no crying. I was going to exact the most thorough revenge I could, and I was going to do it in a way they would never, ever forget. My sadness had burned away, leaving behind something hard and resolute, like steel. The opportunity presented itself in the most sickeningly perfect way, as if the universe itself was in on the cruel joke. It was a Tuesday morning when my mother called, her voice as cheerful and oblivious as ever, a sound that now set my teeth on edge. Aubrey, darling. How are you? I feel like I haven't talked to you in ages. I'm fine, Mom, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I was getting good at this acting. Just been busy with work. Wonderful. Listen, I was just talking with Meredith, and we had the most marvelous idea. Her baby shower is in a few weeks, and we were thinking, who better to organize it than her wonderfully creative little sister? You're just so good at these things. I was silent for a moment, the audacity of it sucking the air from my lungs. She wanted me. The woman whose husband had been sleeping with the guest of honor. She wanted me to plan the party celebrating the baby that was likely conceived from that betrayal. It was grotesque. It was twisted. It was absolutely perfect. Mom, I started, and for a second, I thought the facade was going to crack. But then the cold resolve washed over me again. This wasn't a burden. This was a gift. This was the stage, the setting, the perfect trap. I changed my tone, injecting a warmth I didn't feel. Oh, Mom, of course. I'd be honored to do it for Meredith. Anything for my big sister. Will Harrison be involved much in the planning? I asked, a tiny, pointed question she would never catch. Oh, you know men, she laughed, dismissing it. He'll just write the check. This will be our little project. Great, I said, my voice sweet as poison. I want it to be a truly special day for her. My mother was ecstatic. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Meredith will be so happy, she gushed. I smiled into the phone, a grim, humorless smile. Oh, I'm sure she will be, I said softly. I'm going to make sure it's a day she remembers for the rest of her life. We hung up, and I sat there for a long time, the plan already beginning to form in my mind, piece by devastating piece. That night, my new life began. I became a detective in the dark. I waited until I heard the deep, steady breathing of Sterling sleeping in his bed down the hall. Then, I slipped out of the guest room, my socked feet silent on the hardwood floors. My hands were shaking the first time I picked up his phone from the charger on the kitchen counter. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure it would wake him up. I knew his password. We'd always been open like that, priding ourselves on our trust. The irony was a bitter pill. At first, my search was fruitless. I scrolled through his recent texts, his call log, his photo gallery. Nothing. He was careful. Too careful. I felt a flicker of doubt. Had I imagined it? Was I going crazy? Then I remembered my IT friend telling me once that nothing is ever truly deleted. I started digging deeper, into old photo backups, into the cloud services connected to his phone. It was tedious, scrolling through years of digital clutter. And then I found it. A folder, cleverly named Work Projects Q3. It was a boring, innocuous name. The kind of name you'd use to hide something. My finger hovered over it. With a deep breath, I tapped it open. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Pictures of him and Meredith. Some looked innocent enough at first glance, them laughing at a coffee shop, a selfie at the park. But others made it clear. They were intimate. They were proof. My stomach churned, but I couldn't stop. I methodically downloaded every single one to a hidden folder on my own device. It wasn't just once. This had been an elaborate, long-running affair. The dates on the photos stretched back over a year. The next night, I moved onto his laptop. I found text messages they thought they had deleted. Emails. Old social media conversations. Their words hurt, but they also fueled me. They were so casual about their deception, so confident they'd gotten away with it. They talked about me as if I were an inconvenience, an obstacle to be managed. Aubrey's working late tonight, one text from him read. My place, a reply from her. It was that simple. That cruel. I worked in silence for over a week, a phantom in my own home, gathering every shred of evidence. Every betrayal leaves a trace, and I was determined to find every last one. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building around my heart, and another stone to be used when the time was right. The final, and most devastating, piece of the puzzle came not from Sterling's laptop, but from a folder of screenshots I found buried deep within his cloud storage. It was a conversation between Meredith and my mother. And my father. I felt sick reading it. My own parents, actively helping them keep their secret. You need to be more careful, my mother had texted Meredith. Harrison is getting suspicious. And Aubrey, well, Aubrey doesn't need to know. It'll just upset her. This is for the best. For the best? A text from my father, in the same group chat, your mother's right. Keep this quiet for everyone's sake. We don't need any more drama. Another text from Meredith, Sterling is worried about her finding out. My mother's reply, tell him not to be. We'll handle Aubrey. The most important thing is protecting your image, sweetie. You have a family to think of now. The inheritance is complicated enough without a messy divorce. And the worst part? Meredith had screenshotted this entire exchange and sent it to Sterling, with the caption, "See? I told you my parents are on our side. We have nothing to worry about. They weren't just betraying me, they were a team. A united front against me. All the people in the world who were supposed to love and protect me had chosen each other, and they had chosen to sacrifice me for Meredith's happiness and a clean line of inheritance." Reading those words, I felt the last bit of love I had for my family wither and die. It was replaced by something hard and unyielding. I saved everything. Every photo, every message, every screenshot. I backed it all up to a secure drive, and then I backed it up again to a USB stick I hid in a book. I wasn't going to be reckless. I was going to be patient. I was going to wait for the perfect moment. And thanks to my mother, I knew exactly when that moment would be. The day of the baby shower arrived, bright and sunny, a perfect mockery of the storm brewing inside me. I had thrown myself into the planning with a chilling efficiency. The theme was a new chapter, with decorations of open books and delicate flowers. Everything was perfect. Tasteful, elegant, and completely fake. I was the perfect hostess. I greeted guests at the door with a warm smile, people I'd known my whole life, friends of the family who cooed over how wonderful it was that I was doing all this for my sister. "You're such a good sister, Aubrey," one of my aunts said, patting my arm. "Meredith is so lucky to have you." "I'd do anything for her," I replied, and the lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I saw Meredith across the room, holding court on a large, comfortable chair, like a queen on her throne. She was radiant. She laughed, opened small gifts, and placed a hand on her growing belly. Sterling was hovering nearby, playing the role of the attentive brother-in-law. At one point he came over to me while I was arranging appetizers. "Great party, Han," he whispered. "You did a wonderful job." I just gave him a tight, non-committal smile and moved away. My parents were flitting about, their faces masks of proud, doting grandparents-to-be. None of them had a clue. They saw me as I'd always been, quiet, agreeable, second-best Aubrey. They thought I knew nothing. And that was my greatest weapon. I kept myself busy, refilling glasses, arranging the presents on a large table. Each gift, a tiny pair of shoes, a soft blanket, a baby monitor, was a fresh stab of pain. This should have been a joyous day. Instead, it was an execution. And I was the executioner. My heart was pounding, a steady, heavy drumbeat in my chest, not with excitement, but with the cold, electric anticipation of the chaos I was about to unleash. The moment came after we cut the cake. Everyone was clapping and happy, their mouths full of buttercream and congratulations. My mother caught my eye from across the room and gave me an encouraging nod. It was time. "If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment," I said, my voice clear and steady. The room quieted down, forks pausing midway to mouths. "I have one more gift for Meredith. It's a special one. Something from the heart." I walked over to the gift table and picked up a large, beautifully wrapped box. I had spent an hour on the presentation, with exquisite silver paper and a luxurious white silk bow. I wanted it to look important. Because it was. The box felt heavy in my hands, heavy with secrets. I carried it over to Meredith. Her face lit up with a bright, genuine smile. "Oh, Aubrey, you shouldn't have," she said, reaching for the box. "You've already done so much." "Oh, but I had to," I replied, my own smile feeling tight on my face. "This one is just for you." Everyone gathered around as she began to unwrap it, tearing away the paper to reveal a simple, elegant photo box. She looked at me, a little confused, and then she lifted the lid. Inside, there were no baby booties or silver rattles. Inside were photos. The first one on top was a crystal-clear 8x10 print of her and Sterling, kissing, in his car. Her expression faltered. It shifted from excitement to confusion, a little laugh catching in her throat before it died. And then, as she processed what she was seeing, it curdled into pure, abject horror. Her hands started to tremble. She fumbled through the other photos in the box, compromising pictures, intimate moments, undeniable proof of their affair, all carefully chosen by me. A murmur went through the crowd as people closest to her craned their necks to see. Harrison, her husband, leaned in, a puzzled smile on his face. The smile vanished. His face went blank, then dark with a fury I had never seen before. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. As the murmurs grew louder and people started asking questions in urgent whispers, I walked calmly to the large windows at the end of the room. "Actually," I said, my voice ringing out over the confused chatter, "I think this gift is something everyone should be able to share." With a single, deliberate motion, I pulled the cord for the decorative curtains. But instead of revealing the sunny backyard, the curtains fell away to expose what I had spent the morning setting up behind them. It was a gallery of betrayal. The same photos, and many more, were enlarged, printed on large foam boards, and arranged for everyone to see. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The truth was now on display, undeniable and grotesque. There was Sterling and Meredith in his car. There they were, at a hotel. There they were, in poses no brother-in-law and sister-in-law should ever be in. Meredith's face was a ghostly white. She looked from the photos to me, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. My parents froze, their party smiles melting into masks of horror. My mother took a step toward me, her hand outstretched, as if to silence me, but I wasn't going to be silenced. Not anymore. I took a deep breath and let the words flow, not screaming, but speaking with a chilling clarity that cut through the stunned silence. For months, I began, my voice carrying to every corner of the room, my sister, Meredith, has been sleeping with my husband, Sterling. I pointed to the photos. As you can see, this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was an affair. And the best part? My parents knew all about it. They knew, and they helped her hide it. They chose to protect their golden child rather than tell their other daughter the truth. All eyes darted between me, the photos, and my shell-shocked family. Harrison let out a strangled cry of rage. You traitor," he yelled at Meredith, his voice cracking with disbelief and pain. He didn't even look at her again. He just turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall with a crash. Standing there, in the middle of the wreckage I had created, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was done. The secrets were out. I looked at the crumbling faces of my family, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing but release. I had done what needed to be done. So I picked up my purse, and I left. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. That way I know you've given me a like, and I'll know you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1, and then listen to what happened next. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout. I just got in my car and drove away, leaving them to choke on the truth. I didn't go home. I checked into a cheap motel, turned off my phone, and slept for 10 hours straight. For a few days, I heard nothing. The silence was a relief. Then, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. It was Paige, one of Meredith's closest friends. Or, well, now her ex-friend. Aubrey? It's Paige, she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and disgust. I just had to call. I am so sorry. What Meredith did? I can't even wrap my head around it. But listen, you need to know what happened after you left. It was a war zone. She told me that after I left, the party turned into a full-on battleground. Harrison's parents were there, and once they understood what the photos meant, they erupted. Paige said Harrison's father, a big, imposing man, walked right up to Meredith and called her a name I won't repeat here, but let's just say it was crude. My father, with whatever dignity he had left, tried to intervene. "She's pregnant. You can't speak to her that way," he pleaded. Harrison's father just laughed a cold, harsh laugh. "Your dear daughter is a tramp," he roared. That's when my father, bless his foolish heart, lunged at him. It didn't go well. Paige said Harrison's father landed a single punch that sent my dad sprawling to the floor. And it wasn't just the men. Harrison's mother, enraged, started screaming at my mother, who screamed right back, calling Harrison's dad a gorilla. The two women ended up in a physical altercation. Paige said Harrison's mother pulled my mother's hair so hard that other guests had to physically separate them. My mother lost a chunk of hair in the process. Paige told me all of this with a kind of breathless horror. "Honestly, Aubrey," she said, her voice dropping, "Meredith has always been selfish, but I never thought this. You need to get a good divorce lawyer. Don't let them walk all over you." Deep down, I felt a small, dark twinge of regret for not staying to witness it all myself. But I knew it was for the best. I needed to be free of their chaos, not drowning in it. The first thing I did Monday morning was call the most ruthless divorce lawyer I could find. That evening, I went back to my house for the first time. Sterling's car was in the driveway. I unlocked the door and walked in. He was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up, his face a mess of shame and desperation. "Aubrey," he started. "We need to talk." "No, we don't," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I'm talking to my lawyer tomorrow. I want you out of my house. Tonight." That night, I methodically packed all of his belongings into trash bags. Clothes, books, his stupid video game console, everything. I dragged them out onto the front lawn. He didn't argue. He just loaded his things into his car and left. The next day, the divorce papers were filed. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, Paige called me again, her voice shaking with rage. She'd had her own suspicions, and after what happened at the party, she did some digging. It turned out her husband had also been cheating on her, with Meredith. When Paige confronted him, he didn't deny it. Instead, he got in his car, drove to the apartment where Meredith was now living, and punched Sterling, who had moved in with her, square in the face. So, even though he dodged a punch at the party, Sterling finally got what he deserved. The irony was almost too much to bear. Sterling, my cheating ex-husband, promptly moved out of Meredith's apartment. He couldn't stand the idea that she might have cheated on him. The hypocrisy was laughable. My own divorce was finalized quickly, a clean break that only made the eternal, messy chaos surrounding my sister seem even more pathetic. The house was sold, we split the money, and I walked away with enough to start over, completely and totally on my own. The final act of this family tragedy came a few months later, after Meredith's baby was born. A beautiful, innocent little girl. Of course, a DNA test was done immediately. Harrison insisted on it, his lawyer making it a condition of their divorce settlement, which involved arguments over potential child custody. And in the ultimate twist of fate, it turned out Sterling was not the father. The baby belonged to Paige's ex-husband. The biological father, now divorced from Paige, wanted nothing to do with Meredith beyond his legal obligations. I can't say I blame him. Staying with someone as untrustworthy as my sister sounds more like a punishment than a reward. And so, alone and with a new baby, Meredith did the only thing she could. She moved back home with our parents. The golden child had returned to her throne, albeit a tarnished one, in the house where our parents could protect and enable her forever. As for me, I took my half of the money from the house sale and I left. I moved to a small town a few hours away, a place where no one knows my name or my story. I have a new apartment, a quiet two-bedroom with a small balcony that gets the morning sun. I have a new job at a small marketing firm, and I'm making a decent salary. I've made a few new friends. My life is small, and it is peaceful. I think a lot about family. About what it means. I've realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, and trust, and safety. I think about inheritance, not the monetary kind that my mother was so worried about, but the emotional kind. I've broken free from the toxic inheritance of my family, the legacy of being second best. My parents and my sister have never tried to contact me, and for that, I am grateful. There are no apologies that could fix what they broke. I'm free. It was a painful, brutal road to get here, but I'm finally free of the shadow. And some days, when the sun is shining and I'm sitting on my own little balcony with a cup of coffee, I think about that baby shower. I don't feel anger anymore. I just feel a quiet satisfaction. I gave them a gift, all right. A gift of the truth. And it's a gift they'll have to live with forever. Thank you for listening.